Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us today, Thursday. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful day to be here with you along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We've got a lot for you today. Some comments from Fighting Irish head coach Marcus Freeman, his last comments of the week before Saturday night's home opener against Texas A&M. Kickoff is at 7:30. You will hear the game on the flagship station for Notre Dame football, Sports Radio, WSBT, as well as Sunny 101.5 here in the South Bend market. The Odyssey app, AUDACY. You can hear the call with Tony Simeone and Ryan Harris. Coverage starts at 3 o'clock Eastern time, 3 to 6:30. Tim and the boys will be out at the linebacker with the game day show. Tim Grau, Jim Irizarry, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka, they'll all be there. Some of the special guests lined up, Frank Stams and Brian Flannery from the 88 National Championship team, Steve Orsini from the 77 National Championship team. So join the game day crew at the legendary linebacker, 3 to 6:30 this Saturday night. How are you today, Jesse?
I'm doing pretty well. Pretty tired. Worked out hard this morning. But it's a really beautiful day out, and I'm looking forward to my friends and I have moved our Monday night tradition to Thursday night. So we're going to go watch some football and get some wings tonight. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, so will that be like a regular weekly Thursday is going to be your thing now?
Yeah, so last year we did, well, not even last year, like 3 years now, we've been doing Monday night. And then to start the season, each week someone picks a new restaurant. And then the second half of the season, we actually go to people's houses. So I was committed to going last week, and then last second I bailed out because I was like, I don't want to watch the Cowboys with anyone but myself. So I stayed at home. And they're notorious for leaving like after the first quarter, and I'm like, I don't want to miss any game when my team is on. So
when they
just stayed at home.
Yeah. It's probably a good choice. Ooh, Bobby O'Shea coming in hard at you. He said, surprised that Naomi allows that. So I know. Thursday is kind of like in college. I remember, like Thursday was kind of the, everyone got antsy end of the week, and there were like it was a big social night out at the bars and stuff like that around town.
Yeah. So Thursday night, and I obviously outside of Saturday, Thursday night was my favorite day of the week in college because of like what you were saying. The weekend is almost here. Not a lot of people have a ton of Friday classes. I did, being in a STEM major, having math and science classes. I had classes just about every Friday. But playing.
You were the brainiac. You were like not in for all that, is what you're saying.
Well, to a degree, but
we all know better. Yeah.
But the thing was, is playing football, you really couldn't do anything Friday night because you either were, traveling on the road or, preparing for a home game. Mm-hmm. And so Thursday night was always a fun night to kind of, go have a little bit of fun, but obviously know kind of what's coming up. So that was the night where a lot of us would kind of go out to this local little like bar, club, kind of dance around, have fun, and have a good time. But it was always kind of like the pregame to the weekend.
Joe says he went to a suitcase college. Everyone left on Friday. All right. I was always too worried that if I started like that habit, I did it very infrequently because I was, like I said, I worked at a bar for like most of the first year and a half I was in college. So that was enough. Like, and there were nights where like I might get off at 10 o'clock and then it's like, well, maybe partake a little bit. And then the next thing you know, you end up closing the place. But that's another story. We had some nice, it was, Big Daddy beverages, the old Bud Light. They were flowing back in the day. All right. Well, let's talk some football. We've got a lot of football to talk today. Jesse does have a defensive whiteboard he's going to break out. We're going to look at how to defend Marcel Reed, the Texas A&M quarterback, and that offense in just a little bit. We'll start off, though, with some of today's comments from Marcus Freeman. Did his Thursday Zoom call with the media, kind of his end of the week. A lot of opponent-specific questions came up today in Marcus Freeman's Zoom call, much more so than a couple of weeks ago when he did the Miami Zoom call, a lot more specific about this opponent. So they are, of course, preparing to face a mobile quarterback in Marcel Reed, dual threat guy. And I asked Freeman if having Riley Leonard all of last year, mobile dual threat guy himself, if that maybe helped them prepare for another dual threat guy like Marcel Reed this week. So he answered that a little bit, but there was an interesting nugget that he dropped along the way that I think that is actually more interesting. So here's Marcus Freeman.
And you knew Riley could run the ball with his legs, and I think understanding the opponent, like understanding who you're going against, is so important, especially with your defensive line, and understanding what chances can you take and where you must stay in terms of your rush lanes. And so, yeah, having Riley Leonard here last year helps, but also understanding that you gotta watch film, you gotta prepare for a guy that can run. We use Scrap Richardson a little bit today this week, as sometimes at different times playing a little bit of quarterback, just gave us a little bit of different speed and athleticism back there. And so it's just understanding, like, you can't play spy, you can't be a passive, but you also have to understand rush lanes and where you cannot let the quarterback escape.
So Scrap Richardson, a wide receiver here at Notre Dame, but he played quarterback, he played running back, he played DP, he played all over the field in high school, like a lot of guys do, but in the state of Georgia. And he was also a Georgia State track champion in the 100, 200, and 400 as a junior. So, bottom line is that dude can fly, is what I'm trying to say. And they used him part-time as the scout team quarterback. My ears and antlers definitely went up when I heard that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the important thing that Marcus Freeman said there is, it's not necessarily that you had Riley Leonard in a mobile quarterback. That doesn't translate to what Marcel Reed can do. And so watching film, understanding his kind of play style is really what's going to be significant for Notre Dame this week in terms of preparation, because it doesn't just translate because you're a mobile quarterback. Every mobile quarterback plays the game a little bit differently. And Marcus Freeman also said a lot of buzzwords that we're going to get into about the into the whiteboard, about QB spy, lane integrity, those things. And those are, some of the most important things that come up when you're playing a mobile quarterback. But anything that you can do in practice to replicate what we're going to call game speed, and game speed is, Marcel Reed speed, playing the quarterback position, that's only going to help your defense, because the last thing you want to do is get out there and go against, someone with the athleticism of like CJ Carr, and then kind of be a step behind, because that's just what you've been practicing all week. So, finding a quarterback who can replicate, the athleticism, the change of direction, and just the overall speed is just really going to help the defense be the most prepared. Just be like, the speed and the agileness isn't going to catch them off guard, essentially.
I'll be honest. I made the assumption going in that Tyler Buckner would have been the scout team quarterback. So, he's been the number 3 guy, but when you look at the skill sets of the guys in the room and the fact that he is still a walk-on because of his athleticism and running ability, kind of thought that that's who it would have been. But then you put a guy like Scrap Richardson back there, and you talk about being able to duplicate the speed of a guy like Marcel Reed. And again, it is a different kind of speed and a different, and that's kind of the way you said it, is the way I prefaced the question to Marcus Freeman, because just because you're a dual threat guy, one does not, it's not a one size fits all. They all do things a little bit differently. So to have a true athlete who's also played quarterback in high school, like Richardson, running it, I think we'll see how well that helps prepare them. But I would think that it will help them greatly, because now you talk about you're not, they put that kind of athlete there again to replicate as much as possible the kind of speed that Reed will be able to play at. So you face that all week. I would think it'll go a long way on Saturday. I am Tenzin. I am the son of Aang in the YouTube chat says, going to B-dubs in the Little Apple was always a fun time in my single days. Now, I've seen I am Tenzin make some references to Kansas State before. Are you a KSU alum, I am Tenzin? I don't know if you've ever brought that news to this show before. Little Apple is Manhattan, Kansas. Was that like was that your thing? Were you a Wildcat back in the day? We'll have to find out here. People are waiting to know the answers. Okay, so we will come back to Marcel Reed more specifically with the whiteboard in a little bit. But like Miami, Texas A&M has an influx of receivers from the transfer portal. The two biggest additions probably Casey Concepcion from NC State and Mario Craver from Mississippi State. They're not big, but they are speedy. And Freeman was asked if that means Irish defensive backs getting more physical with them Saturday night.
Yeah, I wish I could say, yeah, that's all we're going to do is try to be physical. But, sometimes you're overly physical with fast guys. They run right by you. So we have to, again, mix up our coverages, mix up our techniques, and keep the ball in front of us. We got to make sure we don't give up a big play because every one of those guys you mentioned is a home run threat. And we have to make sure we're on body, but also keeping the guys in front of us because we can't let a catch turn into an explosive play that turns into points.
All right. So what do you think, Jess? What do you think of that? What do you think they need to do?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Notre Dame does have a little bit of an advantage because they have played NC State in years past. So they have an idea of Concepcion and his skill set and his abilities. Obviously, the way he fits into this Texas A&M offense is going to be different than how he did against NC State or in the NC State offense. But when you put on the film, it's not hard to see that he has a lot of speed. He caught 2 touchdowns last week, I'm pretty sure, in that game against Utah State. And another thing that kind of maybe gives you pause is he plays very similarly to the Miami wide receiver who was giving Notre Dame fits a lot too, Malachi Toney. And so, that was a good, I think, learning game for Notre Dame, and you would hope that they could transition into some of those skills that they learned going against Malachi Toney and use those against Concepcion. But that's just he's going to be the biggest matchup in this game for the Notre Dame secondary. But back to kind of the original question, again, Marcus Freeman brought up a lot of the things that you want to hear and a lot of the buzzwords of, mixing up coverage, ball in front, and that's going to lead, to be another big topic in the whiteboard discussion is how does Notre Dame keep everything in front of them? How do they keep their eyes on the quarterback? And, when you think of Notre Dame, you think of a lot of man-to-man, but that doesn't bode well because man-to-man means you're turning your back to the quarterback. You're not keeping everything in front of you. And so I don't anticipate Notre Dame being in heavy man unless it is, probably 3rd and long type situation. But I think early on downs, they're going to have to play zone so they can keep everything in front of them. They can keep their eyes on the quarterback. But just because you're playing zone, that doesn't mean you have to play this bland, boring defense. And that's what we'll get into is how do you mix up zone, basically?
Exactly.
How do you disguise zone? How do you alter different zone looks and that sort of stuff? So I think they just need to do more to be just be more dynamic out of zone. Don't just sit in zone to play zone. You need to be able to disguise, bring different stunts and that sort of stuff and play out of zone. Make the zone hard and make Marcel Reed have to make a lot of reads as he's going through his progression.
And you can, Vince and I have talked about this week. You can still be physical at the line of scrimmage playing zone. Like just because you're playing zone doesn't mean you have to play off them and give them this, 5 to 7 yard cushion at the line of scrimmage. You can still be physical with them as you hand them off to the guys behind you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think I want my corners jamming them up at the line of scrimmage too much. I would want kind of my safeties or linebackers down in the box to get hands on some of these wide receivers and give them a reroute or a jam off the line of scrimmage. But, obviously what you run into, kind of like what Marcus Freeman was talking about, you get corners up at the line of scrimmage and especially someone like Christian Gray, who's not the biggest, most physical guy. Leonard Moore would be better because he's got longer arms, just a longer kind of body that he can recover, I think, if you jam. But, those guys got to get back. And so if you're a corner that needs to drop into a third, you try to jam and get beat, well, now you're trying to catch up to a guy, chasing him down to get to your zone. So trying not to divulge too much information right now,
right.
but
little tease coming up on the whiteboard. Don't want to give it all away now. I got you. We'll be coming to that. We'll just keep teasing. The whiteboard is coming up, and we'll get into some thoughts on how they can go about defending Texas A&M with Marcel Reed and those receivers. And the one thing I would add as well, and again, it's like I know like a guy like Craver has played at Mississippi State, so he's played in the SEC. He's had some success there. Concepcion's played at NC State. He's played against ACC competition, Power 4 competition, but like how it's hard to gauge just how truly fast they are considering they've played UT San Antonio and Utah State, because I was just not impressed at all athletically with anyone Utah State put on the field last week, as an example. Like, just not impressed in the least bit. And for a while, Utah State was kind of playing with Texas A&M. You know, things really started to steamroll a little bit toward halftime and into the second half, but I don't know. It's hard for me to gauge just what this matchup is going to look like because of what they've played against so far.
Yeah, and that's the hard part about it is it's really truly hard to gauge what is, pure talent, athleticism, and what is like good scheme, good offense, good players because of the quality opponent. But if we know one thing, we know that Colin Klein, and I have a lot of respect for Colin Klein. That's a Texas A&M offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Former Kansas State offensive coordinator before going to A&M.
Right. A lot of RPOs, a lot of play action, and most importantly, misdirection. And so what you fear against an offense like this with a quarterback like Marcel Reed is what I told you about on Tuesday, and it is one of my favorite principles on the offense is you get motion in everyone's eyes going one way, and then you hit a run back the other way. And when you have a fast quarterback, that's a lot easier. So, Notre Dame has to stay super disciplined. And again, like Marcus Freeman said, kind of keeping everything in front of them, trusting their eyes. But yeah.
I'm going to play one more comment from Marcus Freeman before we take a break. Mark Freeman was asked about what he saw from CJ Carr as a leader engineering the fourth quarter comeback against Miami.
He's confident. I know he has the control of the huddle. He wanted the ball in his hands. That's who he is. He's a competitor. And, we're confident with the ball in his hands. And we didn't get it done in that 2-minute situation last game. But, again, he is a very confident individual that he'll be ready if that opportunity presents itself again.
Confident. They're confident in him. Do you feel differently / much more like how do you feel about CJ Carr? Do you feel markedly different now compared to going into the Miami game a couple of weeks ago?
I don't. So like the biggest thing going into week one was, will the talent and expectations live up to kind of where the rest of the team is at? I think that he has proven himself calm, cool. He can make the throws. He can make, most of the reads and stuff. Now it's just kind of cleaning things up. And so I do have a lot of confidence in CJ Carr that he is going to have the ability, and not even the ability. I think it's just more confidence in what he's reading, confidence with his decisions and those sort of things. And so I do think that CJ Carr, game one was about kind of just not proving yourself, but showing to the fan base that you can run this offense.
That you can be that guy. You can look competent, and you can also look competent. Like in that specific situation, you can look competent in the face of adversity when you're down by 2 touchdowns and you're going to be unfazed. So like those were some of the, because like we've seen the skills in practices and spring games before, but those are the kind of like, to be able to face that, I mean, it sucks that they lost, obviously, and you wanted them to be able to, to pull out a victory on the road. But with all of those different things presented to you, I think you actually found out a lot about a young quarterback right away. And it's like, he can face that now. that's not the concern. The real concern is now how you advance the offense and, how much you're willing to let him do now in a home environment, especially back-to-back situation a couple of weeks later in his next game.
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest with you, Miami is going to be the toughest situation that he plays in the entire season until they potentially get to the postseason and playoff. I mean, Miami is going to be the most talented. That is going to be the hardest environment and road stadium to play in. And so the fact that he could get up there game one and stand his ground, I think, is a big testament. But now it's kind of enhancing, modifying, sharpening the tools, that sort of stuff, because we all know he's capable. But now he just needs to just start trending toward that perfection, making every single throw, making every single read. And again, that's not my expectation, but you obviously want your quarterback to be as perfect as possible.
We're going to take a look at how the Irish might defend Marcel Reed, the Texas A&M quarterback, and those receivers and the rest of the offense. Whiteboard is coming up next. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. We got to the bottom of the I am Tenzin, the son of Aang whole thing. He was in the Army stationed at Fort Riley, which is just between Manhattan and Junction City, Kansas. So that's why he's got the hanging out with the locals at Kansas State and all that kind of good stuff. Along with Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers. Are you ready for some whiteboard, my friend?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time thinking about this today.
Okay.
So,
all right.
A lot of notes. And what's crazy is when you're doing something like this, you really only need one board and a lot of markings that are going to start flying around.
I'm sure they will. Now, remember, we have a radio audience and an audio-only podcast audience. So if you need me to step in and left to right and right to left and all those different kind of things, we need to be as descriptive.
You got my 6
as possible. Yes, I've got it for you. Well, let's start off with some thoughts from Marcus Freeman first on the quarterback, Marcel Reed, the dual threat guy who to this point in the season through 2 games has passed for 509 yards and 7 touchdowns, hasn't thrown an interception yet. He's also carried the ball 18 times for 105 yards and a touchdown. He had 10 carries for 66 yards against Utah State last week. Here's Marcus Freeman on Marcel Reed.
I think with anything, he's more comfortable in the pocket. I think at times last year you would see him scramble, maybe instinctively instead of staying in the pocket and delivering the ball. But you see this year that, he's comfortable in the pocket. He has a strong arm, and he still has a athletic skill set that is it's really a challenge to stop and tackle him. So we got to continue to try to mix up some looks, try to get him to hold the ball, and then we got to keep him in the pocket, man. He is a dangerous runner, but also can throw the ball.
All right. Those were some of the keys we've talked about this week with a mobile quarterback like Marcel Reed. Keep him in the pocket as long as possible. Make him have to face third and as long as possible. So, Jesse, bring that whiteboard in, and let's go get at it.
Yeah, so, a lot of what Marcus Freeman was talking about is, it looks like Marcel Reed this year is a lot more comfortable in the pocket. I think he's more of a pass-first guy and instead of maybe a run-first guy that you see with a lot of mobile quarterbacks. So
I didn't feel like watching them. I didn't feel like it felt like, at least last week anyway, against Utah State, they didn't want him running, or the design of the offense is they don't feel like he has to run, to your point.
Yeah, and I think that, it's probably a little bit of combination of both. You don't want to put a lot on tape knowing that you're playing Notre Dame and who your first 2 opponents are. But also
exactly,
those were defenses where you could just shred him up in the pass game, right? He didn't have to feel the pressure of basically a collapsing pocket or his reads not being there. So, that's where Notre Dame steps in. They're obviously going to be a much tougher defense. And I think that they can do, a lot of stuff to confuse Marcel Reed. So I have the screen brought in. I need you to bring it in.
All right.
So the first thing that I noticed that Marcus Freeman was talking about is it sounds like they don't want to play a lot of QB spy. Did you notice that in one of the first clips that you said, or one of the first clips that you played?
He did say that earlier, that you don't want to have to spy a lot. Yes.
And the reason he's saying that is basically you don't want to have to take someone away from coverage and now solely use them to, again, spy on Marcel Reed.
Mm-hmm.
What that says to me is in early downs, Notre Dame, first and second down, they're not going to play spy. And if they're not going to play spy, they're not going to play man. So that means they're going to get into zone. And the reason why you want to get into zone is because you don't want to turn your back to Marcel Reed and lose track of where he is on the football field, essentially, right? So the first thing that we have to get into is if you're not going to play
for the record, just before you go any further with that, man versus zone, I feel like against a quarterback like Marcel Reed, actually zone, one, because of his mobility is what you need to play more often, but two, can he complete the short passes in the way Carson Beck did a couple of weeks ago? I think it's going to be more difficult for Reed to complete. Like, he's not going to attempt a lot of those same kind of passes. They want to work the ball deeper. So I actually feel like zone concept, whatever it looks like, should be more successful against a quarterback like this week.
Yeah, and that leads me to, they're going to play a lot of cover 2, cover 3, and probably a lot of Tampa 2. Because of, like you were saying, like, you want to force, this team wants to, with Concepcion and the Mississippi State guy, they want to get vertical. And they want to stretch the field. So zone is definitely going to help you. And so, like you were getting into, Marcel Reed is going to have to be patient and just take the underneath stuff. And I don't know if he's going to have the patience and discipline to do that.
He hasn't shown that's his game so far. He hasn't shown that that's his game at all.
He wants to cut it loose. So you're going to play zone, and you're not going to play a QB spy. So what we got to talk about the defensive line first. What you want to do is you want to go QB contained, and that's largely going to be on your ends, your defensive ends. And so you're going to have, and this is going to look a lot similar to kind of when Caleb Williams came to Notre Dame and they absolutely dominated him and shut him down. So you have your 2 outside guys. They're going to keep contained. And what you mean by contain is you're still trying to get pressure, but you're not getting pressure vertically upfield, because that creates running lanes for the quarterback to step up and kind of run behind them, right? And so your ends are basically kind of going to get up the field and then set the edge, basically sit here on the end. And then in an offense where there's a lot of play action, a lot of RPO, you need to have a lot of stunts along this defensive line, and you need to plug up the inside gaps quickly, because that's a lot of where RPO and play action takes place. So, you're going to have your nose tackle and your 3 technique kind of stunt, or maybe, and since Notre Dame has a little bit more athleticism along their defensive line, maybe your defensive end, loops in and a tackle kind of loops out, and they're on the QB contain and setting the edge. And I think
before you go any further, I want to play this soundbite then, because it plays into what you're talking about. Marcus Freeman was, they've talked about getting pressure with 4 guys on the quarterback, and he was asked if, loops and stunts and those kind of things, or twists and stunts, I guess, was the way it was phrased, can help with that pressure. And here's Marcus Freeman's response.
I think that you got to look at the situation. One is it a passing situation where third down, it's a passing situation. You're going to do some different stunts and twists that can help you get pressure on a quarterback. But if it's first or second down and it's a 50-50 situation where you don't know if they're going to run or pass, sometimes those twists and stunts can really be problems.
Kind of cut off there for some reason, but so there you heard what he said.
What was his last word? They can be. Did they say? Was he about to say problematic?
Be a problem. Yeah.
So it's really funny because I have all these notes that I wrote down to talk about while going through this, and in capital letters I have "do not blitz," and then I have an arrow pointing early downs versus passing downs, and that's essentially what Marcus Freeman just talked about. And what he's getting at is you don't want to force the issue in this style of offense. You don't want to force blitzes or stunts or anything crazy, because that's what leads to a blown assignment, an open gap, or whatever it might be. You don't want to create lanes for Marcel Reed, and so don't blitz. There's really no need to blitz. And really, you'll see Notre Dame probably bring blitzes and passing downs, like he was talking about. You're not going to bring it in 50-50 early downs, and so there needs to be a lot of just lane integrity. So when they bring pressure, again, I don't really see it as what's going to be a blitz, but they will stunt, loops, those sort of things. And occasionally they might mix in a linebacker to bring 5 instead of 4. So that kind of covers the defensive line aspect of things. You want your ends to be containing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with the defensive ends, you were talking about the defensive ends containing before, and the key against a quarterback like this for the ends is don't run past the quarterback. You can't have your ends running past the quarterback.
They can't get vertical. They got to sit on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And read kind of what's going on. So that covers the defensive end side of things. And I do think, though, if they do get into maybe a spy situation, for whatever reason, I think KVA is the answer in that situation. Obviously, a linebacker who can play in space, has a lot of athleticism and speed, but you just need a tight front. You need to plug those inside gaps. You need to plug them down. You need your defensive ends to set the edge and contain. But I think where the real fun will come is getting into coverage. A lot of what Texas A&M runs is pretty similar to Notre Dame. I think it's going to be a lot of 10 personnel, a lot of 11 personnel. So right now on the screen, we have 10 personnel. Ball's at the middle of the field. Quarterback's in shotgun. You have doubles or twins. You have 2 wide receivers on each side. And then you have your running back offset to the right of the quarterback who is in shotgun. So, knowing Notre Dame and their defense, a lot of what they did against Miami personnel-wise in this same groupings is you have 4 down linemen, defensive linemen, you have 2 linebackers who are going to probably be more than likely inside the hashes. In the last game, it was Snead and Drake Bowen. And then on the perimeter, you have your 2 safeties, Free and Strong, your corners, Leonard Moore and Christian Gray. And then a big piece of this is going to be, what you do with that third player. Are you going to go nickel and replace and use a defensive back? Are you maybe going to bring a third linebacker onto the field? I think that, early on, knowing kind of what Texas A&M wants to do, and don't get me wrong, Moss is a good running back, and they're going to have to account for him. But I think that they'll lean more so towards the nickel and have an extra nickel guy out there. So, right now what's showing defensively is you have your 4 down linemen, your 2 linebackers, you have your outside corners, and you have your 2 high safeties. So it looks like a cover 2 shell. And then you have your last kind of, your nickel player, in this case, probably Carson Hobbs, playing down kind of closer to the line of scrimmage. But immediately right now, this is where the games start, because you could do, your typical cover 2 where your safeties are dropping. And then you can also, come out and play some cover 3 where your corners are now taking a third, your nickel player is taking the curl to flat. Your linebackers are taking hook to the hook zone. Your other safety is coming down and playing the curl flat. And then the last safety, the free safety, would kind of work towards the middle of the field and be that third kind of zone player. And again, the reason why this is beneficial is your eyes are in front. You're literally in zone coverage, watching the quarterback and reading and reacting, what he's doing. And so already, you can disguise cover 3, cover 2. And then I think and then this is where it's going to get real tricky. And I think where you can have a lot of fun is you can get into Tampa 2, cover 3 robber, and then what we called cover 3 Mabel. And those are just different variations that come off of zone. We'll get into Tampa 2 first. Tampa 2 is really nice because
let's do Tampa 2 real quick, and then we're gonna have to take a break so that we don't get behind this hour. So do that if you want to do Tampa 2. Go ahead and do Tampa 2, and then we're gonna have to take a break here within a couple minutes.
Yeah, so Tampa 2 is just another variation of cover 3, but you're just using different guys to achieve cover 3. You're changing kind of where guys are dropping on the field. So in traditional cover 3, your corners would be dropping to the third of the field with your safety. But now what's going to happen is your safeties are going to take a third of the field, and they're going to take basically from the sideline to the hash on each side of the field. Now your corners, instead of dropping, they're going to sit into this kind of hook this curl to flat area, and then your nickel player is going to drop into a hook to curl. Your outside linebacker is going to drop to a hook to curl. And then in Tampa 2, again, what makes this so different, your safeties are dropping, and then your linebacker is going to drop to the middle of the field and kind of play that last third or zone area. So that's Tampa 2 right there. You're dropping a linebacker usually to the middle of the field in that last third zone in cover 3.
All right. We'll come back. We'll take a break real quick. That'll give us 8, 9, 10 minutes, something like that. So come up with the juicy stuff to finish us off with the whiteboard in this hour. It's Notre Dame and Texas A&M, 7:30 Saturday night, and we've got more with the breakdown of how Notre Dame might defend Marcel Reed and the Texas A&M offense coming up next. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. We got a few minutes as we wrap up our second whiteboard segment of the week with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We just did some Tampa 2 defense as we take a look at how Notre Dame could defend Marcel Reed and the Texas A&M offense this Saturday night in the home opener, 7:30, the game right here on Sports Radio WSBT and the Notre Dame Radio Network. So now, Jesse, we are going to – is this your favorite zone scheme, cover 3 robber? Is that your – like, would you say it's your favorite? Is it close to the top of the list?
Yeah, I would say it is because it allows a player like a Don Schuler to make plays in the middle of the field.
Okay. All right. So we're going to put it back up, the whiteboard back up on the screen here, and we've got the Texas A&M offense. We've got Marcel Reed, the quarterback, at a shotgun with a running back set off to his right, and then we have 2 receivers on each side of the formation. We've got 4 down linemen for the Irish, a couple of linebackers, and this is basically a dime package you've got on the field here, right? Because this is 10 personnel that A&M has out there.
Correct. And I think I said earlier nickel, which means you have 2 DBs on the extra DBs on the field. But yes, this is actually dime. So please forgive me. Dime means you obviously remove a linebacker and go with an extra defensive back. But reason why cover 3 robber is coming up because of what you got into a little bit earlier ago. Texas A&M is going to want to get vertical, use their speed. Marcel Reed's going to want to throw the ball downfield, but Notre Dame's going to take that away. And so if you're Marcel Reed, what do you do to kind of, or not even Marcel Reed, if you're Klein, what kind of plays do you call up to help Marcel Reed overcome this cover 3 that Notre Dame might run or Tampa 2 or whatever, basically zone, any sort of zone. You start attacking underneath in the middle of the field. And so if you're Notre Dame, you have to be able to adjust to this or kind of predict when these things might happen. And so you get into a little bit of cover 3 robber. And with cover 3 robber, again, this is made for a good, strong safety. Your corners are going to, because it is cover 3, your corners are going to have a third. Corner is going to have a third. Your dime player is going to still play curl flat. Linebacker is going to play hook to zone. Other linebacker is going to play hook to zone. And so what does that leave now? You have 2 safeties, a third of the field. Or sorry, your last safety, your free safety is going to come down and play this curl flat. And so that leaves your strong safety 2 options. One, they can play the middle of the field and get to their deep zone, or they can rob. And what rob means is you are now coming down to the middle of the field and you're robbing kind of a zone, or you're robbing another defensive player's zone. And so this safety can look like they're about to, again, pre-snap, everything looks the same. Corners bail out, you're in zone. But now this strong safety can come down and rob the middle of the field or those intermediate kind of passing routes. So even if they get them off, maybe 3-4 yards potentially on like a 3rd and 10, this guy can come over the middle of the field and just blow it up, and that's really what this is going to be. Or maybe best case scenario, he jumps a route, Don Schuler jumps a route and gets an interception, or he makes a big hit and the ball pops up in the air and someone else can rally and get an interception. But what robber does is it gives that free safety the option to either drop to that middle 3rd zone of the field, or he can rob or mug kind of the middle of the field and take away a lot of that underneath stuff.
All right. Good stuff. You got anything else? Yes.
And so this is very close with cover 3 robber with one of my more likable, zone coverages in this situation. So this is going to be called cover 3 Mabel. So you have cover 3, and then the Mabel refers to matching. And so you were talking about earlier about, just because you're in zone doesn't mean you have to play off and not be physical at the line of scrimmage. And that's actually really true. And so what you want to do in this situation is cover 3 Mabel is matching. And so what does matching mean is everyone is still playing a zone concept But this allows you to kind of match the wide receiver in your zone if the wide receiver gets too vertical or starts stemming really deep on kind of go routes. And we know that's what Texas A&M is going to want to do. So what that means is, as these corners are kind of fighting up on the line of scrimmage and then dropping back, into their third zone, if this wide receiver wants to get vertical, basically what the corner is going to do is just going to say, screw it. I don't care about my zone. You're clearly just getting vertical. I'm that zone. I'm the last guy. And so he will come off of zone and actually play man-to-man. And so that's what's really fun about this concept is, it allows you to start off in zone, but then also get into man-to-man and really match some of the speed that these Texas A&M wide receivers have and are going to want to go, attack you with. So being able to match and come off of your zone allows for one, tighter coverage, more eyes on the quarterback again, and just being more reactionary at the end of the day. You're not waiting for Texas A&M or Marcel Reed to bring the play to you. You're not playing rigid. You're not playing, what Marcus Freeman calls football. You're playing football. You're reacting. You're matching off your wide receiver if they're getting, they're pressing you too vertical, and now you're in your hip. You're playing man-to-man, and that guy can't beat you, or not even that man, Concepcion can't beat you over the top while he's getting vertical. So, again, all of these looks look the same. Cover 2, cover 3 robber, Tampa 2, and cover 3 Mabel. Did I change any of the defensive configuration of how they lined up pre-snap? No. And that's the whole point, is now we're working 5 different coverages off of one shell look. And we know that, with a quarterback like Marcel Reed, has he really proven himself in the passing game yet, where he's just going to dice you up and dissect coverages and defenses? I'm going to lean towards no and make him prove me otherwise.
All right. I like it. Mixing these up, like how important is it, not to just to give him the same looks over and over again?
I mean, that's what's going to win the game. That's what's going to cause turnovers. And this is what I kind of alluded to this earlier. This is what they did really well against Caleb Williams when he came to USC. And that was coming off, I believe, the Heisman season and them just blistering Al Golden's defense at USC the year before. Is you create so many, pre-snap disguises that instead of the quarterback just using their natural given ability, and that's a lot of what Marcel Reed has, they start to panic because they can't trust what their eyes are telling them, right? And so they're going to kind of get antsy feet. They're going to get, and that's when the pocket starts to collapse. You want to force Marcel Reed to step up into the teeth of your defense. You want him, and that's what they did against Caleb Williams. They had contain on the outside, and the pocket was crashing down on him. And so as it's crashing down, he has to step up into the pocket, but really what he's doing is stepping into the teeth of your interior defensive linemen and linebackers. So it's going to be really significant for Notre Dame to disguise coverages, but that just will lead to more breakdown in plays and Marcel Reed having to just improvise and not be kind of as dynamic as he would like to be.
Indy Forever 72 in the YouTube chat says, wasn't crazy about Freeman's comment about trying to keep everything in front of them. Gave me flashbacks to Miami going down the field, 8 to 10 yard chunks. Again, this is, I get those flashbacks because of what we just saw a couple of weeks ago, but the difference is the kind of quarterback you're facing. And I don't think that Marcel Reed can complete those same kind of passes in 8 to 10 yard chunks the way Carson Beck did. And you have to respect his running ability much more than you had to with Carson Beck.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where a little bit of the error was, I think, against Carson Beck, is he is a really good thrower and he can dissect you with his arm. You want to make Marcel Reed prove that he can do basically what Carson Beck did to you. And that's sit back there in the pocket and just dice you up the entire game. And that's not, Notre Dame still needs to create pressure like we talked about. And that's the thing is, even with Marcel Reed, you can't just allow him to sit back there and read. You need to disguise and have pressure in his face. So he's trying to read, but also trying to elude, defenders at the same time.
That's the whiteboard. Good stuff, Jesse. We will take a timeout. Hour 2 is coming up. That means rapid fire. We've got some more comments from Marcus Freeman and some of our thoughts on those comments and some other topics as well. That's an hour 2. Budweiser's weekdays sports beat with irishbreakdown.com. It's hour 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com, and that can mean only one thing, Jesse. Are you ready for rapid fire? Are you there?
I always forget I have an extra mute button on this thing. And I'm so paranoid that I'm going to be on a hot mic during the commercial. So I double mute myself.
Double muted probation during the break there. All right. Well, we're ready to go with rapid fire as we start off hour number 2. Fill in the blank. The most pressing question you have about Notre Dame football right now is blank.
The most pressing question I have about Notre Dame football right now is their trenches. We saw an offensive line that struggled against Miami. Texas A&M has another elite edge rusher. And then on the defensive side of the ball, against a team like Texas A&M with a mobile quarterback and an RPO and a lot of misdirections, you need your defensive line to establish the line of scrimmage, not get pushed around. And so that is honestly, and again, it is such a big part of the game. Like, I'm not worried about Notre Dame's skill positions, quarterback, wide receiver, corners, safeties, but I am worried about the trenches, and that's what won them a lot of games last year.
No, I think that's very fair. I mean, and that's what we've all kind of, like very game specific. That was not the Notre Dame team that we saw last year making a run in December and January to the national championship game. Are they going to be physical? Mine is maybe same but different. Are they just flat out going to get their swagger back? Because they were a swagger team last year.
Confidence.
Confidence. And that's not the team that we saw take the field at Miami a couple of weeks ago. Not just confidence, but just the way they carried themselves, the way they went about their business.
I mean, they didn't look like the team that just played for the freaking national championship.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, you do wonder, was that maybe too much? I don't want to say overconfident, because that's not how they played, but they just didn't play with that aura about them. They didn't carry any of that vibe into the season with them. Now, the things that we've heard are it's been a different team at practice over the last week or so. They played with some fire in practice last week. They had to they were able to go more contact because it was an early bye week. They had to simulate some of that game speed and stuff like that. Maybe we see some of that come out, and again, you've got, to the swagger, this is it, ND Sailor. They played violently last year. They did not play like a violent team against Miami. And, again, I think that swagger is part of that. But you lose a guy like Xavier Watts, you lose an emotional energy guy like Riley Leonard. We saw the kind of passion. Riley Leonard was always willing to lay it on the line for Notre Dame. And we just didn't see that kind of play from very many guys across the board against Miami a couple of weeks ago. And so that's what I want to see, is a team that knows it's good and shows it's good on the field Saturday night against Texas A&M. That's the biggest question I think that I have. But that also, again, plays into what you're talking about down in the trenches on both sides, and to what ND Sailor is talking about. They didn't play with violence in the trenches. And I think a lot of that starts with some confidence. It was just too hesitant of a team, I think. Marcus Freeman talks a lot about football versus fitball. And I think that maybe this kind of plays into what I was talking about as well. He said this week that there was too much fitball in the opener against Miami.
Yeah, I think that's where you see some of the velocity that we lacked maybe at times, is that trying to be just so perfect in your gap. There was plays that were made. I remember King made some plays. Boubacar made some plays that probably weren't exactly how you draw them up on paper, but they were playing with velocity. And at the end of the day, that overcomes all mistakes. And we have to have that mentality of not just trying to be perfect, but being aggressive and playing the game with the velocity that overcomes any mistakes.
Okay, Jesse, what's that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Freeman always comes back to this every time they lose a game. I feel like it's football versus football. This is like always at the top of his totem pole when he starts, talking about things that they did wrong. What this means to me, this is, and as a player, this sucks because this is such a fine line because you don't do your assignment, you get yelled at, right? But then you make a great play not playing your assignment, and here's Marcus Freeman up here saying, oh, well he played, that's not exactly how we drew it up, but they're so athletic. They're so, playing with so much tenacity and velocity. It is overcoming kind of the assignment sound football. And so, again, I think as a player, this is a really hard line to kind of, be going back and forth on. But what this comes down to is just playing with fast and playing confident. Just if you're going to make a read, just go 100% and make the read. Don't be a hesitant. Just be decisive in whatever you do and play fast.
And that's kind of like the way I interpret it is like, if you're going to make a mistake, make it going all out, make it going 100 miles an hour, not in a hesitant fashion, because we've talked about this before. The more you have to think, the more you have to think about what you have to do, the more hesitant you're going to be. And isn't that what that, like, especially from a defensive perspective? And again, I don't know how much of this goes to the fact that they didn't play nearly as much zone last year, and they obviously played a lot more zone against Miami. We expect them to play more zone, but like,
it's hard to play aggressive in zone. It's hard to play fast in zone.
Right.
It's hard to take it to another team when you're in zone.
Even pre-snap, like, didn't it seem like there was like some indecision on Notre Dame's part in terms of who had what assignment, who was supposed to be where, all those different kind of things? Did it feel like that watching it to you?
Yeah, and I think that was a big advantage that Miami had, is a brand new offense, a brand new brand new quarterback. So this is an offense and looks and formations that Notre Dame might not have practiced all off season, right? And so that's where that fit versus football comes in, is you're like, well, they're doing this and they're motioning that, and that means I need to do this. And sometimes it's just snap of the ball, let's play football. Let's play backyard football. Let's get on our guy, let's get into our zone and that sort of stuff. And so I think a real advantage comes in this game is Texas A&M has two, game films, and you played them last year, and it's the same offensive coordinator, and it's Marcel Reed, who you're familiar with. Like, there's going to be a lot more comfort and familiarity playing at home against this Texas A&M game, against playing on the road, opening game, not knowing, how this offense would look with Carson Beck. A lot of talent on the Miami side of the ball. So, again, I think that this lends to Notre Dame favor. And like you were saying, if all else fails, just trust your instincts and play fast, play hard, play physical. And I think that's where Notre Dame really defaulted to last weekend, is when things kind of broke down, they broke down hard, and they did, and no one would just kind of commit to playing fast and decisive.
Look at Drake Bowen with the tackles that he missed. I think he like, what it was, like 4 or 5 tackles he missed all of last season. He matched that against Miami. I think that is kind of exemplifies the point right there. Your middle linebacker, the guy who is, one of the leaders of the team, and the guy who you expect to be, out there making plays, because that's what we saw from him last year. Like, even he had that hesitancy. So I think that, just hopefully they can get past that. That's where they need to be Saturday night. So Freeman was also asked, speaking of the defense, about the adjustment period that for a new coordinator like Chris Ash, and what he learned from that when he first arrived at Notre Dame as defensive coordinator in 2021.
You have a philosophy as a coordinator about this is the way we want to play offense, defense, or special teams. But, at the end of the day, the best coaches put their players in positions to play well and to play fast. And sometimes it takes going against another opponent to say, okay, what does this guy do well? How does it fit within the vision we have for our scheme? And so I learned that personally, obviously, when we did some things versus Florida State my first year, right? And I said, okay, we got a little bit different personnel here than we did where I was at previously. How can I adjust my scheme our scheme to fit the talent and the personnel that we have here. And that was an ongoing process throughout the season. It truly was. And it will be with our offense, defense, and special teams this year. Like, how do you continue to put certain guys in positions to succeed? Right? We have really good football players here. It's our job to make sure that we put them in positions to have success and they play well enough to execute what we're asking them to do. And so no matter how long you've been at a place with new talent, every year you have to each week tailor your scheme to fit the guys that you have.
Tailor your scheme to fit the guys that you have. So I think that, like he finished with maybe the most important comment of that whole soundbite. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it takes a good amount of self-reflection and swallowing your pride a little bit as a defensive coordinator, because like Freeman said, everyone as a defensive coordinator is going to have a philosophy, right? And you predominantly want your guys to kind of fit your overall philosophy. And that's, true most of the time. But, when you start going against some better opponents and maybe, they expose some weaknesses in your defense or things aren't going quite, it's one thing to do it in practice and everything looks great and everyone's doing what they're supposed to. But until you get into game reps, game speed, it's just, you're never going to know. And so, Elko, I think struggled. Al Golden struggled. Marcus Freeman struggled in their first games at Notre Dame. Until you see your personnel play, you're not 100% sure of what they're good at in your overall philosophy or what their strengths are in your overall philosophy. And so now what Chris Ash has to do as a good defensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator for a team like Notre Dame, again, that has a lot of expectations and is coming off of what they did last year, you have to recognize what your players are good at and what allows them to play really fast inside of your defense at the end of the day. So you're kind of taking a combination of both what your players are good at within the philosophy of your defense, and you allow them to keep doing that over and over again.
And that's what's so frustrating, because everything that we've heard Chris Ash say from day one is, we're not running the Chris Ash defense, we're running the Notre Dame defense. Well, it's all counter to what we saw against Miami. That was obviously his scheme, and you look historically at the way he's done things, that was Chris Ash's defense. That was not the Notre Dame defense. And hearing Marcus Freeman say those things tells me that he knows that Chris Ash has to better suit what he's doing and what he's calling to fit the personnel that is out there in the field wearing Notre Dame uniforms right now. That's what I heard Marcus Freeman say. So now, will we see that translated into something different when they take on Texas A&M? That's the question. ND Saylor is saying Marcus had a bad first game. So did Golden as DC. Only Elko and Lee started well. True to an extent, but as Bobby said, Golden's first game wasn't bad, but then someone else pointed out the two safety blitz. I mean, that was a fatal mistake that Al Golden made in his first game, was the two safety blitz. It obviously led to the back-breaking touchdown. You take that out, he had a pretty good game overall, but it was just one really bad call. We didn't see him do that kind of thing again. It's always a little bit of a mixed result. There was still Al Golden's first season, there was more of an extended transition period, because let's remember, at the end of that season, there were still plenty of people who wanted to see Al Golden shown the door. It wasn't until year 2 and year 3 where Al Golden really took that to another level. You really can't afford that kind of extended period, though. There's not that kind of grace period for Chris Ash when there's
just too much talent on this roster.
Too much talent, and you just played in a national championship game. No one's going to be forgiving if you see soft defense like they played last week. There's just no one's going to forgive that at all.
Well, and I hope that Chris Ash included, the entire defense should really be playing with a chip on their shoulder, because they didn't play to the standard of what they know they're capable of, and certainly, what got them to a national championship last season.
Correct. Joe says Drake is a downhill player who was forced to be passive. That's like asking prime Shaq to get out of the lane and shoot 3-pointers instead. Couldn't agree more. There's a couple comments from Corey that I'm going to slip in, but I'm going to wait until after the break. We'll take a timeout. We've got more Notre Dame football to discuss. We've got plenty of college football stuff as well, and even some NFL talk. We've got an NFL game tonight. I don't know that we're going to talk about that necessarily as much, but we've got more coming up when Rapid Fire continues right here. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire continue with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers, a little Scooby action there. One of the dogs crawling up. Got to unmute yourself again.
Everyone's jumping on me for dinner right now.
Everyone's hungry in the Jesse household, huh?
That is correct. And Naomi is not here right now.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Here we go.
Corey Ruth with a super chat in the YouTube. He says second half defense hopeful, ? 4 3 and outs, no run game, and average Carson Beck. He said it feels like post game we've elevated Beck's game when in reality his game was not much different than Carr's game, which for Carr was amazing because it was his first ever start. For Beck, it was just average. What do you think about those thoughts?
I think that this can go both ways. I think it's a compliment if you're saying that CJ Carr played really comparable to Beck, because Beck is like a 6-year guy. He's going to get drafted in the NFL. He was on a lot of people's, big board as the number 1 quarterback going into last season before, the Georgia situation and hurting his elbow. So, I think it's kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't think Carson Beck played average. And I do think that CJ Carr did play a very similar game to Carson Beck. I think both guys are very talented. But I think it should show you, how mature CJ Carr is and really what's to come with CJ Carr.
That's what, we kind of talked about it earlier in the show about CJ Carr and what, Marcus Freeman talked about what they learned about Carr from that fourth quarter comeback. Notre Dame was down by 2 touchdowns, and Carr led Notre Dame back into a tie after they were down 10 points. They were down by 14, or actually they were down by 14 points. They were down 10 points. So 2 double-digit second half deficits that they faced. And that's the biggest positive that you can take out of the whole situation was freshman, first start on the road, top 10 opponent, not a powder puff team, and he at least did his job leading him to that comeback. I think if there was an extra minute, if there were 2 minutes instead of closer to a minute at the end of the game, at the worst case scenario, Notre Dame and Miami were going to overtime that night. That's what I think. But because you were down to a minute, things changed a little bit. Miami was just able to pin its ears back and get after Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame would have been able to play it out a little bit differently at the end. So tons of positives. Now it's on CJ Carr and Notre Dame to be able to build upon that. KCMCC says Texas A&M is going to be motivated with revenge on their minds in this game. They'll be ready with Elko. Remember Elko, it's not just last year Notre Dame winning at Texas A&M, but Duke 2 years ago. He's lost 2 close games.
Makes me really nervous about this game, if we're being 100% honest.
I know. He's got a little bit extra motivation in this game, I think. ND Sailor says, do they start Sneed or Kingston Viliamu Asa? Sneed's still listed at number 1 on the depth chart.
Sneed's going to be the starter.
Yeah, he's going to start in this game. He played well against A&M last year, for that matter. So you're still going to see plenty of KVA. The question is how much KVA you see.
Well, I think KVA is going to be more suited as a guy who has that contain on the outside against Marcel Reed, and especially maybe in some 3rd and long situations where you're bringing in kind of your more, athletic packages. Basically, a run play isn't coming. So KVA will find his way on the field. He's just not going to be a starter, and he'll play a good amount as well.
Yeah, he will. He's going to play a lot. He's going to be very important against a guy like Marcel Reed. And, to the conversation about the defensive coordinators, USMA 87 says, I admit it, I was a year 1 Fire Golden guy, and things worked out pretty well. It's on Chris Ash, though, right now. It's all on Chris Ash. It's a big game for him. It's a big game for Marcus Freeman. It's a big game for Chris Ash, especially Saturday night. Which number will be greater at the end of the season? Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price's combined touchdown runs or CJ Carr's touchdown passes?
I'm going to go with CJ Carr's touchdown passes. I think it'll be close. The running backs combined for 24 last season. They had 0 after the Miami week. Carr obviously has 2 passing touchdowns, so he's got a 2-0 lead on them right now. I think that this number gets pretty close to 30 for CJ Carr. And while I'd like to think that, that Price and Love will be combined around that. I mean, that's the thing. If they combine for 30 and Carr goes over 30 passing, this is going to be a really scary offense. But I think CJ Carr slightly beats them out.
Yes. And, like when you look at, you mentioned Love and Price combined for 24 last year, but they pitched a goose egg last week against Miami. Like, it's crazy, like 2 touchdown passes by Carr, and then he runs for another one. I think last week someone asked about Carr's total touchdowns. I think it's going to be somewhere around 30. I think it's like between 30 and 35 is where his total touchdowns end up. So I don't know if his touchdown passes hit 30, but I think he might be approaching it when it's all said and done. And so even if Love and Price combine for 24, 25 like they did last year, I think that the touchdown passes by CJ Carr ends up being more this season. Sportsman Philly 22 in the YouTube chat says, very worrying. Some analysts are saying this is the game to play prevent defense against the very speedy Concepcion and Bussy. Ash will be delighted with the news, and we are stuck with, I don't know what that last was supposed to be, boring.
Look, I think.
We did the whiteboard breakdown. It's not, there's a difference between prevent and zone. Like prevent is you're willing to give up big chunks, like true, you can still contest passes in zone, but as we talked about in the whiteboard, and I don't think Sportsman Philly was in here when we were doing the whiteboard, so go back and like look at the different stuff. Like the question is, do you believe that Marcel Reed can beat you with his arm on all those short passes like Carson Beck was able to do 2 weeks ago in Miami? My answer would be no. I think Jesse's answer is no to that. That's part of the give and take with zone. You have to respect Marcel Reed's running ability, and that's why you need to play more zone offense or defense. That doesn't mean you need to play it all the time, but you have to account for him as a runner, and that's why you need more zone. And it's also part of how, like what we've seen from Texas A&M, they want to be able to hit some big passes. They want to hit some explosive passes. And again, zone is going to counter some of that. What's the balance for you, Jesse?
The balance for me is playing zone on early downs, and then getting into some of that match that we talked about, getting into maybe some zone or some man, robber situations in the later downs where you can get a little bit more aggressive, 3rd and long, and force Reed into a bad throw. But I think the big thing here is, like you were saying, just because you're playing off or in zone, that's like prevent is the complete like extreme of that situation, So like there's still a lot of things you can do, but the main thing is Notre Dame just needs to keep everything in front of them, and really do a lot in coverage to disguise. And in my opinion, Marcel Reed is not he's a good thrower of the ball, but he's not a polished quarterback.
Right.
He's not a guy who's sitting back there and reading coverages and beating you like Carson Beck did. And so the more you can confuse him and make him mentally break down with your coverages, the better night it's going to be for Notre Dame.
I mean, that's the kind of offense that Miami runs, air raid with shorter precision passes, and Carson Beck executed when he needed to for the most part, and that's not the kind of offense that Texas A&M runs, so you would expect a difference Saturday. Probably the biggest college football rule change this season, Jesse, is a crackdown on faking injuries. If a player on the field presents as injured after the ball is spotted for the next play, that player's team is charged a timeout. And so if the team doesn't have timeouts remaining, there's a 5-yard delay of game penalty that's assessed. We've seen this kind of in action the first couple of weeks. The player also has to remain out for at least one down, even if the team's granted a timeout. Can't return until receiving the approval of a medical professional. So what do you think about this new rule? Do you buy or sell this to curtail the faking of injuries?
Yeah, I mean, I buy this actually, and I feel like you're going to be a sell, so I can't wait for this discussion. But I buy this because what this does is defenses fall down and or a player falls down and allows the defense to sub because they're stuck in a personnel that they don't like based off of what the offensive personnel is presenting. And so it can really slow down kind of fast tempo offenses, and it allows you to sub out, when you're stuck in a personnel package that you don't like. And so I like this, but on the flip side of it, you get into a very I forget the word. I should know it, but it's like it's you enter kind of the gray area and you leave this up to the ref to potentially determine what's fake and what's not fake. Like someone could be seriously injured.
Yeah.
There could be a much bigger situation going on, and so when you leave this up to the refs, it makes it really hard. And that's the thing is like they're gonna get one wrong, but I would like to end this players falling down and potentially having a ref error, here and there, rather than, my offense now being stopped or slowed down or momentum killed because the defensive player just fell down.
I don't know if this is going to disappoint you or if it'll make you happy, but I actually buy this the way it's written like this. And like the way it was originally proposed, I don't know if it just didn't specify, but the whole like once the ball is spotted thing, I think that is the key. And they also initially said that a player I think had to be out like for the remainder of that series if he, if he left the field, which I thought was just too much. But you're saying, well, he's only got to be out for the next play. I don't think that's a big deal because what we've seen way too often was once the ball was spotted, someone signals from the sideline and now it's time to go down and pretend that we're hurt. And that's where this kind of stuff was happening. So the way it's written, I haven't seen this actually occur in a game yet that I've been watching. I'm sure that we'll see it at some point, but I buy it. I think that this is actually good. I like the way that they came up with this, and I don't think that you're too harshly penalizing a team, like for a player who actually is injured. So I'm good with it.
He's good with it.
Yeah. By the way, Sportsman Philly 22 says, I don't mind zone coverage if there are crazy adjustments and tall players jumping into the air to intercept passes from Reed. Yes. Like the whole, like the Adon Schuler thing and the lack of an interception on that play against CJ Daniels last week or 2 weeks ago now, almost. That was mentioned by Marcus Freeman, and it came up as well in some of the other media sessions with I think Mike Mickens. Like they've covered that, I think, with Adon Schuler. Like you have to be more aggressive there. You have to go up and play the ball, make some kind of play on the football rather than just waiting for it. I think I don't think we'll see that mistake made by Adon Schuler again this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
We'll take our final timeout and then back to wrap up rapid fire tonight. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. So, Jesse, apparently you've got this double mute system, but somehow didn't mute yourself during the last break because there were some people talking about your yappers, I think, yapping there.
I think Naomi just got home.
Oh, so all the boys are happy to see Mama walk in the door. Is that what's going on then?
Correct. They'll be fed.
All right. Yep. Tommy Guns says kind of ironic, really, when you think about it. Oh, well, what can you do? It's only a dog.
They wanted a guest appearance.
There are a lot worse things that you could hear during the break on the YouTube side. By the way, Joe Allen asking you, Jesse, in the YouTube chat, what's your first call of the game on offense? If Mike Denbrock says call it, what are you going with?
Yeah, I actually think I did this play on Tuesday. You got twin personnel, but you're an 11 personnel, so you have your tight end out, split out. You motion him kind of across the formation. You fake the RPO opposite direction of where the tight end is, headed to. He sneaks out into the flat. Field side wide receiver runs a screen. You kind of fake the screen, and as Jeremiah Love takes that RPO fake, he sneaks off into the backside flat, and you throw him an RB screen kind of down in the flat, and you let Jeremiah Love take that thing probably, 20, 30 yards, maybe even a house call. But I'm going first play of the game, RB screen. But again, you're taking all the direction, you're motioning everyone one way, and you're slipping the screen backside of that motion. Yes.
Do you think?
And if they don't do that, I want them to go spread it out and just hand the ball off like they did with Jadarian Price last game against Miami.
I mean, I like what you're talking about with the play design, but don't you think after all the screen passes that CJ Carr and Notre Dame threw against Miami,
I think Texas A&M is gearing up for the run, baby.
You think they're gearing up for the run? You don't think they're?
And I think Marcus Freeman thinks that too, because that's why he talked about 7 and 8 person boxes.
Okay. All right.
I think everyone's game plan is make the young quarterback beat us.
Right.
So they're gonna be they're gonna be full steam ahead of stopping the run. And so you fake a handoff and you sneak in a little screen behind it as motion is going the other way. I think you could really catch them off guard play one.
Corey agrees what you showed on the whiteboard the other day. He likes that. Michael Cannon. I'm kind of with Michael. Just like an outside run.
Veer action.
Get outside, do a little bit of that. Anything that results in explosive, I would be down for, I think. There's a lot of negative talk about the Chiefs after their season opening loss to the Chargers. They play the Eagles this week. Scale of 1 to 10, how must win is it for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'm just going to go not really. So I'm going to go like 2 or 3 out of 10. And the reason I'm going to say that is there's still the Chiefs. They've gone to all these AFC championships, Super Bowls. They're going to get things figured out. I think right now they're just lacking like offensive firepower. Their wide receivers are hurt or they're suspended. They just don't have consistency at the wide receiver position. So they're a good football team. I know that, statistically you never want to start 0-2 and what that means in terms of your odds for the playoffs. But I mean, we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been just a juggernaut these last, 5, 6, 7 seasons. So if anyone can get it figured out, it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So I'm at like a 2 or 3 on this.
Yeah, I'm in that range as well. 3, 4, maybe. Like, I'm amazed at the number of people, and maybe this is just where we are now because of hot takes and everything else, but I'm amazed at the number of people who are going off the deep end.
They hit panic week 1.
Yeah, you lose. Okay, they lost their season opener to the Chargers, and now it's the end of the world. The dynasty's coming to an end, and I've heard, well, they won all these one possession games last year. How long can you keep doing that? Well, you do still have Patrick Mahomes. You do still have Andy Reid. Now, granted, the division is tougher now. Like it's when you've like with what Sean Payton and
I was going to say,
last year. Yeah.
With the Broncos and Chargers, there's just not as much room for error. Like if this question was posed as, like division, that winning the division, I think that it's more up at like a 5 out of 10, but they could still very easily make it as a playoff team after starting, 0-2. But having the Chargers and the Broncos in your division and their kind of enhanced play is going to make this more difficult.
They're going to be in the playoffs one way or the other. Like they might take a step or two back this year, but they haven't had a receiver for basically 3 years. Like, Rashee Rice is suspended, and they've already got some injuries, and Travis Kelce has taken a step back every year. But like, again, you still have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and you found ways to get it done. So I'm not going to push the panic button. I mean, if anything, I think that Kansas City is going to be even more fired up because of the fact that they lost last week, and they get another crack at Philadelphia. Like, Philadelphia also won a lot of ugly games last year, some one-possession games. They just happened to win the Super Bowl. But the Chiefs have been in 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls. They had a chance to win 3 straight. I don't think that all of a sudden the dynasty is just ending because they lost their season opener in Brazil. Okay, we've got a couple more minutes here. A lot of controversy. Speaking of the NFL, a lot of controversy last week when the NFL Red Zone aired commercials for the first time. I don't know how much of this you followed. Fill in the blank. It's blank that people went nuts because Red Zone aired 60 seconds of commercials in a 7-hour period.
It's dramatic, and it seems like that's what everything is just dramatic. As soon as you change one little thing, it's like, oh, the world is ending. But it's like, are we kidding about 60 seconds during a 7-hour interval of nonstop football? And I'm pretty sure I read too, it's not like the overall screen. Like, it's just one of the screens or something. You can still watch a game in one of the screens, even though that there's commercials going on. So it's like, it's a non-deal at the end of the day. It's literally 60 seconds. It's not even 1% of your total football watching that day.
I think NASCAR has used it before. Soccer has used it in the past, where basically
you cut to one screen that has a little like ad.
Yeah, Scott Hansen is still doing his thing, or like you can see the play, and yeah, they bring up a little 15-second ad or something like that that kind of goes while the stuff is going on. I mean, did you really think that you were going to go forever and there were never going to be any commercials on Red Zone? Like, I've never watched. Have you ever actually sat down and watched Red Zone before?
Yeah.
What do you watch it very often?
No.
Ace 45 4ND says, what is Red Zone? Is it paid? Yeah, you do have to have a subscription to it. So it's basically this guy, there's a host. There used to be 2 Red Zone channels. Now there's just the one with Scott Hansen, but it's like a guy stands there all day, and every time, in an NFL game, someone gets into scoring position, they'll cut away, they'll show what's going on, and then once that is resolved, they'll cut to the next, whoever is moving into scoring position and that kind of thing. So it allows NFL fans, it's really for fantasy football people, I think, but allows NFL fans who don't have the Sunday ticket, or even some people with Sunday ticket can get it, but it allows you to cut in and not just be kind of stuck watching one game the whole time. So it cuts in and out whenever the teams get into down into the red zone. Ace 454ND says he doesn't watch the NFL, not since the 1990s. Okay.
All right.
So it
Problem solved.
I just think, are more commercials probably coming in the future? Probably. But I think the people are just freaking out about this. I just realized we have to cut out. Tommy Guns, happy anniversary to you and your wife. He says it's their 10-year anniversary tomorrow. Happy anniversary. Celebrate well. Safe travels into South Bend this weekend. We will wrap up the week tomorrow. Brian Driscoll is going to preview the big Notre Dame football recruiting weekend. We've got that and more. Jesse, I will talk to you then.
See you guys tomorrow, game day eve.
Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.